Hello, my name's Gepwin, and this is a little thing that I like to do from time to time that I call Gepwin Say, because it's me, and I talk about something that I've been thinking of or something in the news, just whatever catches my attention for a minute, really, because I'm distractible and I like shiny things. So what's been catching my attention recently, or just today, in fact, because I've seen a couple of videos and a couple of response videos and a couple little news stories on the whole Samus thing in relation to Super Smash Bros. U or Wii U or whatever they're calling that abomination of a console recently. Anyway, the entire thing with Samus in the new Super Smash Bros. Game is that they're using the Zero Suit version from Other M, apparently. Now, I know very little about Other M, other than it's considered to be a terrible game. I never played it, I didn't look up much about it, I kind of trusted people's opinion because they seemed pretty universally to pan it. But her character design in this, the Zero Suit remains largely the same. It's sort of a very tight spandex looking thing, which is obviously just there to show off her curves. That's not really what I want to talk about. I'll touch on it a little. The main thing that a lot of people seem to be having trouble with as far as the Zero Suit Samus is concerned is that she now has high heels. And I'm going to touch a little on high heels because I've always found them very weird as they're presented in pop culture, like movies and games and even superheroes and things, um, especially for action heroines. Now, here's the thing: you can argue all day long about whether it's okay to have an action heroine be sexy and whether they should look more like the male heroines in their dress and things, and whether they should show off their curves, etc. All that stuff. And even though I consider myself to be a little bit of a feminist, I don't have a huge problem with seeing sexy female heroes. Now, I'll probably admit, because I am a man, I am in the age range that is aimed at. That is probably why I do not have much of a problem with it. So I'll admit that that's a personal bias, and I accept that about myself, and I'm telling you straight off. What I've always found out is the heels. Heels never made any sense to me. Alright, the spandex thing kind of makes sense. I mean, even in the Wii U game, the Wii Fit girl is wearing spandex because it's actually a good sports wear type of thing. It keeps you dry, it gives you a lot of freedom of movement. Professional athletes all over use a version of this stuff and dress like that. They make it a little more fashiony than it needs to be in a lot of cases, but why not? You know, the spandex is actually quasi-functional. It's good freedom of movement, lets you sweat profusely without any trouble, etc. It's a decent thing to wear in combat if you aren't worried about armor. In my opinion, that kind of makes sense. The heels, however, are not. Heels are a completely useless item. I think this is kind of the point that I'm drawn to with the heel argument as to the sexualization of female characters. As I see it, a lot of female characters get sexualized for no good reason, and I accept that as part of the medium. But there's a difference in the sexualization through the outfit or something, and the fighting styles, etc., that make them look more sexy. I know that it's not particularly feminist, but I get why they do that, and I consider it kind of a acceptable sin. The heel thing is just strange because heels actually limit your movement and limit your ability to do things. That's kind of almost the point of them. It's sort of an extension of the whole foot binding idea. And that's why I personally have a problem with it in association with any of these fighting games, action heroines, etc. Because you aren't going to be fighting in those. The entire point of having them there is because they are stereotypically associated with sexuality in our culture. And they're actually a hindrance to fighting. One of my favorite scenes in a video game is from Tomb Raider Legends, which is terrible for the sexualization of women. That Tomb Raider of that era is completely notorious for that. That's almost the entire reason she was popular. And Legends was kind of a bad spin-off, just playing off the name sort of game. And even in that, there's a scene in that game that I'll show where Lara Croft comes to a party and she's all dressed up in her tight dress and heels because I think she's trying to manipulate the people at the party. And it's sort of expected for a rich erudite British lady would probably do that at that kind of event. So it kind of makes sense there. Then when trouble breaks out, when people start pulling guns on her and she has to go do acrobatic things and be jumping around with guns and things, first thing she does in the scene, before she does the whole dress ripping to her movement and all that junk, before she pulls out her guns and has an entire utility belt hidden in her purse or something, first thing she does in the scene is take off her heels, because you can't fight in high heels. And it's insane. So before I babble on too much more, I did a little research in the back into the history of some of this stuff because I was curious about it. And actually, high heels started as a utility-driven item. They were actually fairly common among men in Persia. They were originally designed as a Persian riding shoe with the heel to keep your foot into the stirrup, but they weren't really high heels as we know them today. They were sort of functioned very similar to the cowboy boot. You could think of them as a precursor to the cowboy boot. And then up into modern fashion, they started out in the Middle Ages as sort of a raised heeled wooden platform shoe, one could think of it, that weren't used for the same reasons. In modern fashion, you kind of use a heel exclusively it makes a woman look taller. It also changes the way her leg lifts up her body, which kind of simultaneously lifts up her butt and then forces her to hold her chest out, making her breasts appear larger. That's usually why you see high heels in fashion. It's generally considered to be mostly a height issue, but it also changes the general body shape. Now, the reason that people are against high heels is some of the things that I mentioned. They prevent your movement, they hinder you. It's been equated to the foot binding thing. I made that sort of thing earlier. I'm not completely sure if there's a decent enough parallel there, but I see where people are coming from on that one. The main thing is they're actually hurting people. The modern style of high fashion female shoe hurts your foot. It is not natural for your foot to be in there. Some people are actually having surgery where part of their foot is removed to be able to fit into those shoes. It's just unhealthy completely. And seeing it in this sort of like fighting game context, like if we're trying to make strong female characters, I'm for that. If the strong female characters need to be sexualized to be accepted, that's not great, but I can see why that would be. If you want to have a strong female character that has that body type and wants to dress like that, I've known women with a similar kind of body type. I know that it makes them feel good and empowered sometimes to dress like that. It just makes them feel good about themselves, and there's nothing wrong with that if that's their choice. But the whole fighting in heels thing really, really bothers me. And let's even look a little further into the Samus specifically, because Zero Suit Samus has these ridiculous looking heels, which I've heard some arguments for and against. They aren't sexualized rocket shoes. Yeah, they're freaking heels. You can't fight in heels. That's my crux of the problem with it. And to even demonstrate this further, Samus in her armor does not have heels. She never has had heels. She has pretty flat shoes. Old Zero Suit Samus had these sort of boot things, which were a little bit elevated, but they're still mostly utility boot looking shoes. The new Samus has these huge heels that wouldn't even fit inside of her armor. Like that's part of the thing. They don't even make any sense. All right, you can say that she's got the tight clothes for movement. You can say she's got the tight clothes because she has to wear them under that armor suit and it's a base layer. Anything like that. The heels just don't make sense and they don't fit inside the armor. All right, now that's really my say. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope it might be a little bit illuminating. Please feel free to comment and start a conversation with this. I'm very curious what other people think. I know that feminism in video games is kind of a hot issue. I dance around it myself a little bit. I haven't formed a very solid opinion on much else, but I don't know what it is. Just heels on fighting characters are ridiculous and they kind of bother me. And I don't think they really belong on Zero Suit Samus, who was one of my favorite characters when she was introduced in the last Smash Brothers. Like, I love Zero Suit Samus. I love playing as her. I love her play style. One of my favorite characters, and I just don't like the heels on her as a character design thing. Will I still play her? Well, probably not, because I don't have a Wii U, and I'm not going to buy one for a ridiculous Nintendo game, but I would still play it, but the heels would just bug me. I'm not saying it ruins the character. I'm not saying it's anything terrible. I'm not saying it's anything malicious anyone is doing. It just bugs me personally. And that's really the point, is to talk about something that I'm interested in, what bugs me, my opinion on stuff. Give me your opinion on stuff. I've been Gepwin. I hope you've enjoyed my little rant, and I'll see you soon.